What I have been noticing recently is that there is a considerable rise in schools trying to hide or at least make it more difficult for parents and students to know the rankings. Knowing the HSC performance of a school across multiple years is crucial for families because, in my opinion, it gives them better insights into the academic outcomes of that school. Arguably is one of the most objective ways of comparing schools academically. There are so many subjective factors that go into choosing the school, such as location, teaching staff, extracurricular opportunities, sporting programs, facilities, school culture, and the list goes on. All of these are important to varying extents, but they can also vary depending on who you ask in terms of how important it is. HSC rankings, on the other hand, provide a measurable outcome that allows parents to compare schools on a more level playing field from an academic point of view. However, if you go onto websites like Better Education, where thousands of families visit each month to research schools, you often come across the dreaded letters PNO. This stands for Permission Not Obtained. Essentially, this means that either the New South Wales Department of Education or the principal of the school has chosen not to provide permission for that school's academic outcomes or rankings to be publicly displayed for people and families to know. Over the past few years, I've noticed this has been increasingly more common, particularly among schools that traditionally have not performed as strongly in the rankings. First of all, what exactly are the rankings? Looking at a school's HSC ranking is important because it gives us a snapshot of how the overall cohort performs in the HSC each and every year. These rankings are published by the Sydney Morning Herald and are based on data provided by NISA. The rankings are calculated using the ratio of the number of Band 6 results achieved by students compared to the total number of HSC examinations sat by that school's Year 12 cohort undertaking the HSC. An important point that many parents do not realize is that the overall size of the Year 12 cohort is largely irrelevant when we're looking at the HSC ranking. A school with 300 students is not automatically advantaged over a school with 100 students because the ranking is based on the proportion rather than straight raw numbers. What matters is how frequently students achieve Band 6 results across the subjects they attempt, and this ultimately allows schools of different sizes to be compared more fairly. So for the top 150 schools, these rankings are typically publicly available and there's rarely a PNO attached to any of them. However, many schools outside of the top 150, particularly schools that have historically ranked lower, now choose to publicly not disclose their rankings. Interestingly, this is not limited to schools with only poor academic outcomes though. Many Catholic and independent and private schools also choose to have their rankings not to be published, even when the results are comfortably above the state average. This raises an interesting question. If a school's performing reasonably well, why would they choose to make this information harder to find? From what I've noticed, it is typically the schools that are not performing too well in the rankings who are the ones that will try to make it more difficult or not disclose this information. Secondly, parents and students generally want to know the rankings of schools because it provides a more simplified way of understanding how they are performing. I still remember when I was in Year 6 and applying for selective high schools for the very first time. If school rankings were not available, it would have been incredibly difficult for my family to make informed decisions about their preferences. How would my mum have known that Penrith High School was performing compared to other schools across the state? This issue is not exclusive to academically gifted students aiming for selective high schools either. Parents of average students or students who may need that extra support also want to know how good a local public school is academically or a Catholic school, and private schools compare as well. The problem is that without transparent data, families have to dig much deeper. When parents visit a school's website or social media page, they naturally only show the school's best success stories. They will see the students who achieved ATARs above 95, state rankings, prestigious university offers, or major scholarships. There is absolutely nothing wrong with celebrating those awesome achievements, and schools should be proud of their highest performers. However, these individual success stories do not necessarily tell us how the average student performs at that school. That is one of the biggest reasons why HSC rankings should be available and are so valuable. They're not about the top 1 or 2 students. to provide a broader picture of how the cohort performs as a whole. If we know that a school is ranked 350 in the state, we know that academically, based on that particular Year 12 cohort, it is performing below the state average. That does not automatically make it a bad school. A school may have an outstanding culture, dedicated teachers, and excellent well-being programs. Equally, a school might have recently appointed a new principal with a completely different vision and strategy for improving academic outcomes despite the current year's performance not being too good. Over time, those improvements could become more visible through publicly available rankings. Parents can see progress and make informed decisions accordingly in a much more accessible way. If rankings of schools continue to be more hidden, there are still other ways that I can dig through to get insights on the performance, but it's not very simple or straightforward for the typical family or parent. The issue I have is that if parents want their child to perform at a particular academic standard when they're in Year 12, it can often be too late to make these major changes if they only realize when the child is, let's say, in Year 10 or Year 11. Transferring schools during the senior years is not always easy. Students have established friend groups, teachers know their strengths and weaknesses, and different schools may teach content in slightly different ways. There is a reason why selective high schools like James Roos, Sydney Boys, and other fully selective high schools like Penrith and Girraween generally do not allow new student enrollments into Year 12. Despite their excellent academic records, schools understand that changing environments during such a crucial year can sometimes do more harm than good. I personally transferred from Penrith High School to Girraween High School, where they're both fully selective high schools, because at that time, Penrith was ranked in the top 30, while Girraween was a top 10 school. It has since changed now in recent years, but during when I attended, there was a meaningful difference in rankings that motivated me to transfer, as well as a location point of view. Last of all, I think there's a broader shift happening within the New South Wales education that parents should at least be aware of. There seems to be a gradual movement towards limiting easily accessible information that families have traditionally relied on when making decisions. A good example of this is the selective high school placement process itself. For many years, parents could look at approximate entry scores and get a rough idea about how competitive a particular score is based on the cutoff marks. But now there's no official public cutoff marks. Instead, students are assessed relative to the rest of the cohort across reading, mathematical reasoning, thinking skills, and writing. I personally understand the reasoning behind this, and I do not think it comes from a malicious place. Education is complicated, and reducing students to a single number has its own problems. However, from a parent's point of view, having less objective information available inevitably makes planning and decision-making more difficult. The same issue exists with HSC rankings. If a school chooses to not publish its rankings, it does not automatically mean it is a bad or poor school. There are many excellent schools with strong teaching staff, fantastic extracurricular programs, and supportive communities that may not rank particularly high. Equally, there are schools with respectable and great academic performances that may also choose not to publicly publish their rankings. From the school's perspective, I can also understand why this happens, particularly for private and Catholic schools, enrollments matter. Families naturally compare schools, and academic reputations can influence whether they choose to send their child or children there. Even within the public school system, reputation plays a pretty big role too. Students with extremely strong demand often have a very tightly restricted catchment area, which is only a few streets apart, while schools with lower demand may have catchment areas that span multiple suburbs. Parramatta High School is an interesting example because it is relatively close to where I live, and I know many students who attend there. Its local intake area is remarkably small because the demand for places is so high. Compare that to some schools where much larger catchment zones where expanding the intake area helps maintain enrollment numbers, such as Pendle Hill High School, which was going to be a very local school for myself. I'm not suggesting that HSC rankings are the sole reason for this, but reputation and academic outcomes undoubtedly contribute to how families make choices. As someone who attended two fully selective high schools, Penrith High School and later Girraween High School, this entire topic frustrates me because I know firsthand how important access to information is when families are making educational decisions. When I was younger, my parents did not have insider knowledge about the New South Wales education system. Like many families, they rely on publicly available information to help make decisions about what opportunities or what school was worth pursuing for myself. I want to make something very clear. I'm not arguing that parents should choose a school based solely on the HSC ranking. I actually think that would be a massive mistake. Factors like travel, school culture, student well-being, etc. is so important, and a child's individual needs all matter enormously. A school ranked 200th may very well be better fit for a particular student than a school ranked 50th. What I'm arguing is that parents should have access to as much information as possible. If a school is ranked 50th, parents should know. If a school is ranked 250, parents should also know that. If a school has dramatically improved under a new principal or through new academic initiatives, parents should be able to see that progress over time through the numbers. Better decisions are made when families have more information available to them, not less. But at the end of the day, HSC rankings are just one statistic. It cannot tell you whether your child will have an amazing teacher, make lifelong friends, or discover a passion that shapes the rest of their life. They cannot predict the success of an individual student, and they should not be treated as the only measure of a school's quality. However, they are still one of the best objective indicators we have in terms of their overall academic performance of a school, and I think parents deserve the opportunity to access that information to make their own informed judgment. If you agree or disagree with this, please write it down in the comments below. If you are interested in me talking about other topics, let me know as well. Please like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.